Hi, I'm Mike, owner of the In-Groove in Phoenix, Arizona. So maybe about 3 years ago, I was at a record show here in Phoenix, and a guy comes in. He was a dealer there, and he had, an old school like record box, hold 20 or 30 records in. And he showed me this box, and he said, I might in the future sell my collection. I'm like, oh, okay, People around the show were telling him, like, if you got a big collection, go see Mike. Mike's the guy to buy the big collection. So he found me, introduces himself, lets me look inside this box, telling me flat out, like, look, this stuff isn't for sale. I won't sell you any one of these records, but in the future, someday, I might want to sell my entire record collection. So we, no problem. Let me look. Take a look through the records. I mean, it's like Butcher, Sonics, 13th Fall. I mean, it was a great box. It was like, boy, I'm like, are you sure you won't sell me that? I'd love to buy this box. But no, didn't have any interest in selling it. And I didn't think anything of it. Now, maybe this was 3-4 years ago at this point. So I get a phone call maybe 3-4 weeks ago. And, hey, do you remember me? Met you. I'm like, yeah, I remember you. And what I should have said is, no, I have no clue who you are, but I remember your box of records because I remembered the box of records. Very hard for me to remember a face from 4 or 5 years ago, but you tie that face to a box of smoking records like that, and I'll remember it. So, yeah, he told me he was finally looking to sell his record collection. Would I be interested in taking a look at it? I said, yeah, not a problem. It was out of town. I had to drive up there. Drove up there. He had everything cataloged in a book, and it was one of those collections, and this is becoming a more common collection, and I'm seeing it. The problem with collections like this is their time is kind of past in a large way. So this collection consisted of that box of killer stuff he brought me, which was good. And this is stuff that's been appreciating in value. But it was also a significant amount of Elvis, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, Ricky Nelson. I mean, you're talking the 50s and early 60s stuff that has become extremely difficult to sell. And the stuff that has fallen out of favor. When I was buying records in the 90s, to see a Buddy Holly Crickets on the wall would have been just mind-blowing. It was like the creme de la creme. It was a Grail record for everybody, long before Grail records were really a thing. But, this was a collection that had a lot of those Grail records from the 80s and 90s. And today, they're just not as big deal as they used to be. So we looked. The price he wanted, unfortunately, was pretty astronomical because a lot of the stuff was in okay shape. A lot of it was stuff you picked up at garage sales and whatnot. But the premium stuff is really what I was looking for, but couldn't put a deal together on the collection. He contacted me, couldn't put a deal together on the collection, drove there. I told him, like, look, this is what I could pay you. This is a very, very fair price. I mean, I can't give you any more than that. He wanted something like twice what I ended up paying for him. So he said, he needed to think about it. So he contacted me sometime later, a week later. I'm guessing he contacted some other people. He contacted some other dealers and called me up and said, like, look, and we talked about it a little more. And we ended up putting a deal together. Drove back to him, picked it up. But this is a collection 4 or 5 years in the making. But yeah, here it is. I'm going to show you kind of the highlights. I'm not going to run you through all the Buddy Holly and the Richie Valens and the Crickets. I mean, yeah, not necessary. 13th floor elevators. A nice first pressing mono and 2 stereos. I got to tell you, I think in the last 2 years, I've gotten 11 of these things, which is mind-boggling. It's almost getting to the point where now I'm starting to think these are common, but they're not common. They're very difficult and very expensive to come in contact with, but I bought in a couple of heavy-duty collections, and this is one of those records that you are going to find in heavy-duty collections. And in this case, I mean, beautiful mono copy, beautiful. Normally these records are just smashed to bits. Beautiful mono copy. Nice vinyl. I mean, this is just a solid all-around copy. But again, let's go over some of the highlights. So this particular gentleman was from Seattle, Washington. So what do you find in Washington State? apparently by the bushels, but you know, I would assume not, but yeah, maybe. The Sonics. Tons and tons and tons of Sonics. Introducing the Sonics. Here are the Sonics. Another introducing the Sonics. The Sonic Boom. Here are the Sonics some more. This isn't even all the Sonics, because the stuff I'm going to show you at the beginning of this video is stuff that I've already gone through. All of this stuff is going to be for sale in the store. Keep in mind, guys, I don't sell records like this over the internet. You got to come into the store. Come into the store, check them out, the showcases, the walls. When you come into the In-Groove in Phoenix, Arizona, you're going to see killer records. That's because I do not take everything decent and sell it off the minute I get it on eBay. But yeah, we got Sonic records. It's kind of amazing to see this many Sonic records at one time. And the reason being is I've been open for almost 7 years, and I've had maybe one copy of Here Comes the Sonics. And I want to say it was like absolutely annihilated, destroyed, unplayable. I think maybe the first year I was open, I had a copy come in. But yeah, we're going to have plenty of copies of Here Comes the Sonics now. And there's more copies I'll show you because I ended up keeping some. 13th Floor Elevators. Bull of the Woods was in that collection. All right. He had not one but two sealed Led Zeppelin 4s. Now this is the second pressing with the hype sticker with the 5-digit SD number, but they are sealed. All right. He found this at a garage sale, he said, maybe a year ago for $0.25. First pressing Melvin's Houdini. So that was in the collection. In the Shrink, nice clean copy of the Zombies, Odyssey and Oracle. On Mainstream, the Stone Circus. Had a good chunk of psych, for sure. The Bubble Puppy. Now this is one of those records that, you know, had a lot of cash back in the day, but still desirable now. Twist Uptown, the Crystals. Not the cleanest copy. Man of Words, Man of Music, David Bowie. Now this is on what is actually the much tougher stock copy. You see this promo copy from time to time. You don't see it very frequently as a stock copy. First Led Zeppelin. Yeah, you see a lot of first Led Zeppelins, right? But you don't see a lot of the first label US American pressing Led Zeppelin on the old school mid-60s Atlantic label. The Sacred Mushroom. All right, what else we got? Oh, another copy of Bubble Puppy. Although not a very uncommon record to find. I do get them in the store quite frequently. This is quite cool. Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. This is sealed. King Records, always destroyed. I'm sure even though this is sealed, it's going to come out of the packaging VG. But yeah. Another oddity. He said he purchased this back in, 1994 when it came out. I think it was, $11.99. Still sealed. Division Bell. Actually, it has his name on there. Has his cell phone number on there, and the fact that he didn't put a deposit. This is all typed up. Very interesting. Call Tuesday. All right. The Crystals. He's a Rebel. I'm leaving some of the gas for the end, guys. Gene Vincent in the Blue Caps. There was like 5 or 6 of these, but this was kind of cool because this is actually a stamped promo copy. Great rockabilly record. UK pressing of Badfinger Straight Up, real nice and clean. All right, where are we going here? Beatles Christmas album. Roy Orbison at the Rock House on Sun. One of the absolute rarest Beatle items, American Beatle albums. And there's two of them, the Beatles and the Fourth Season. Unfortunately, neither of these have the posters. But yeah, this was kind of an interesting concept of an album. You know, they really were trying to capitalize on the Beatles any which way they could. They took a Beatles introducing and they took a Four Seasons record. They made a unique cover for it, threw it in this jacket, and yeah, that's what you got. So really the records, not really that big a deal. What you're paying for when you buy this is the poster, which is missing here, and the jackets. All right. He had belonged to the Capitol Record Club. So he had a pretty good chunk of Record Club Capitol pressings. And you could tell the Record Club pressings because they have the triple bar here on the top. And the catalog number is different. There is an 8 in there. So instead of ST-2108, it is ST-8-2108. Much rarer and much more desirable than your traditional stock copy. But yeah, the Beatles, something new. Meet the Beatles, Black Label. There are some variations on these as well. The Beatles, Yesterday and Today. Black Label. This is nice. This is still in the shrink. The Beatles' second album. This is going to be the green label. And Meet the Beatles. Black Label stereo copy. He had 2 copies of Jolly What, and they're both stereo copies. Very heavily bootlegged. Both of these are original stereo Jolly Whats. Very, very nice. Okay, we're going to save that. We're going to save that. How about some sealed Rolling Stones, 12 by 5. Still sealed. This is really cool because you can tell, like this, by the shrink, you know, this mediocre loose bag. The Rolling Stones Aftermath had an old price tag on here that was pulled off. Heavy vinyl, but yeah, still sealed. More than likely first pressing Aftermath. All right. What do we got here? How about a nice Third State Peeled Butcher? Real nice. This was done by Blue Jay Way Gallery. Here is a nice clean stereo. You can kind of see Ringo's necktie there. I don't know how well that's coming in camera, but yes, there was 1, there was 2, but no, there was 3. Oh, nope, that's not a butcher. That's not a butcher. There's the third butcher. So we got a nice Third State peel. We got a nice, what do we got? Stereo, Second State, mono Second State. He actually had a peeled copy in process that was in the process of being peeled, but didn't negotiate that in the deal. It was becoming apparent that that probably wasn't going to happen at the price we needed to get to for this collection. But yeah, 3 really nice in shrink copies. I got to tell you, man, if you want to talk about a record that has rocketed to the moon lately, it's these butcher covers. When I first opened the shop, you know, a nice in shrink cover like that maybe got close to $1,000. But man, I'm seeing, especially the peeled copies, I've seen copies like in this shape recently selling on eBay for $4 or $5,000. These things have just absolutely shot to the moon. And of course, the stereo, significantly rare. A lot of people don't realize, but Phoenix, Arizona got the most amount of butcher coverage, just the way it lined up distribution-wise. I think it was Phoenix got the most, and then maybe like, maybe I think it was Denver, Colorado, maybe was second to us. And it makes sense because I get a lot of butcher covers in the store. I probably get about 10 a year. But I got to tell you, out of the 10 butcher covers a year I've gotten, maybe 60 since I've been open, I've gotten 1 stereo copy. The stereo copy, they say, is about 10% of the run, but from what I've seen come through the door, the stereo is even significantly more rare than that. Now, here's something that goes for tons of money. How about a nice Los Angeles pressing of Yesterday and Today, still sealed. ×2. So actually, this is East Coast and a West Coast pressing. Nice first pressings, really nice, really clean, in the shrink. $4.16, original price tag on it. But yeah, really solid. First pressing sealed Beatles albums go for just insane money. The Beatles 6, first pressing, LA pressing, still sealed. Unfortunately, this one got a little bit of corner damage once upon a time, but it is still a sealed copy. And a first pressing The Beatles, Hard Day's Night, still sealed, with I Cry Instead on the back. Stereo copy, really nice. I've actually got a sealed copy of this in the store already. And here is a record that goes for some big bucks. How about a Pet Sounds sealed original duophonic? I got a story with this. I got a phone call from somebody. A girl calls me about 5 years ago. She goes, I got a very important client and I'm looking for something very, very expensive. You have expensive records? And I'm like, yeah, I've got expensive records. I'm like, what are you looking for? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, this is a weird phone call. Like something in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. I'm like, thinking to myself, I'm like, am I being punked? They're like, we got your phone number from another record store in town. They said you'd be the one to call. Long story short, talking to them, and at first I'm thinking, I'm being punked. Then they start talking and they start explaining like it was a celebrity client who they were buying it for. It was a birthday gift. They were secretaries or assistants. I don't know what was going on. So I said, yeah, come on in. We can work something out. They come in. I had no record for them at this point in time, but I could make a phone call. I knew right where to get something that they were looking for. I got a lot of friends that have got some high caliber pieces in their collection that they're willing to sell. So day goes on. These two gorgeous supermodels walk in the door and they're like, hi, Mike, we called you. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, yes, you did. I said, okay, this is some of the options I got. So I made a couple of phone calls and I told them like, I got this, I got this, I got this. What do you like? I was able to source them a absolutely stone mint mono Pet Sounds through a third party. I think it was like $3,000, maybe $2,500 to $3,500. This was years ago, but it was just a stone mint perfect copy. But this is a duophonic, which isn't as desirable, but I'll never forget that story. And then they kind of told me who it was for, and it made a little bit more sense. But it was just the weirdest phone call ever when they called me up and they're like, hey, I want something expensive. I'm thinking to myself, am I going to get robbed? What's going on here? They're wanting $5,000 to $10,000 albums. Like, what am I going to do? Like, line them up for them and then I'm going to get shot? Okay, now we're going to get into some of the stuff I am keeping. The Sonics Boom. This is a nice, clean copy in the shrink. Second pressing, but very, very clean. Let's set these back in here. Piper at the Gates of Dawn on Tower. This is the mono copy. This is not a good sounding copy, but I do not have a US mono, so I do now. Bob Dylan, his very first album. This is a stereo 6i, which is extremely, extremely rare. I've got a mono promo copy. Now I've got a stereo 6i to go in my collection. I actually have another copy of this, but I'm going to check them out and see which one's better, and I'll end up taking the other one to the store. The Beatles, Revolver. The record itself, good record. If this was nice and clean in the shrink, who knows? It might even go for $100 if it's clean enough. But the hype sticker is what is worth all the money on this particular record. Pushes this record up anywhere, depending on a given day, $500 to $1,000. And it's because of the hype sticker. Shiloh, Don Henley's first band, on Amos. Nice clean copy in shrink. A record that I have in mono, but I do not have a stereo cover, the Mamas and the Papas. This is the very first pressing with the censored toilet cover. If the Beatles Butcher album was as rare as this record, it would be $1 million record because these are extremely rare. I have never had one of these come in the store in the wild. They're only in major collections, and I've only seen a couple of them in my time. But it's the Mamas and the Papas. It's not the Beatles. But stereo copy. A while back, I bought another collection. I showed it to you guys on YouTube, and there was a beautiful mono copy of the Teddy Bears. But this is a record that would have been a Grail record 20 years ago. It's still very expensive. A stereo Teddy Bears. Phil Spector is in the Teddy Bears. This was his band before he got into producing. He looked a little less, well, I guess he looks a little weird in this too. But an extremely rare record in stereo and probably one of the earliest stereo records. This was really early in stereo. Now, he told me that the person he bought it from listened to it one time because she did not like it, and he listened to it one time after that. That is possible. It does look very clean. It is a near mint record. All right, Banshee, Thinking, on Polydor. Some of the stuff I just grabbed out of the collection, not necessarily heavy hitters, but the American Breed, it was clean, it was in shrink, I don't have it. Real nice in the shrinky copy of Here Are the Sonics. This is a second pressing as well, but I wanted to listen to them. There was first pressings in the collection, but they weren't in the best shape. I'd rather take a clean second pressing. The Beatles, Ain't She Sweet, on Echo. All right, and a record that I absolutely refuse to sell. I've never sold one of these in the store. Doesn't matter what condition they're in. I've got this many of them. But this is very undervalued in Mike's opinion. And that is the Velvet Undergrounds and Nico with the Andy Warhol, self-titled, I guess, with the Andy Warhol cover. This is a almost fully intact banana. The top of the peel is missing. Let's see, I think this is second pressing with the stickered over censor cover. Part of the appeal and the way that they got Andy Warhol actually got MGM to take this particular album was because of the way he pitched it. He essentially said, if you release this album, I'll design the artwork on the cover, and you will essentially be able to pitch this album as you are getting a Andy Warhol when you purchase this record. And it is one of the reasons that I think it is a very undervalued record today. Not only are they extremely difficult to find, they're rare, it's an iconic album. Many people put this in the top 10 albums ever released. But it's an Andy Warhol cover. So, $300, $400, $500, $600. I mean, who knows? Maybe like $1,000 in this condition. I'm not going to sell it for that price. To me, it's worth more. And I think the market will eventually figure that out. But we'll put that in the Mike's Not Selling It pile. And Hot Rod High, the Knights. This is a promo stamped copy. Capitol did not do LP promos. They didn't do white label promos. What they did is they stamped in the corner either promo or free. And that's how you got a promo from Capitol. But yeah, so cool little collection. The collection is actually about 1,500, 1,600 records. I'm only showing you so far what I pulled out, which is the better stuff. There's a lot of the records I haven't even gone through yet, but I wanted to get some of it out there and make the video. At the time of this video, if you're watching it, it's already in the store, except for the stuff I told you I was keeping. All right, guys, check us out online, www.theingroove.com. Until next time.